We're glad to know you're still with us right here on the morning edition. We turn our focus to our first commentary on the program. Now, the fuel subsidy is once again at the center of Nigeria's political conversation, but this time, something rather than unusual has happened around the policy. Atiku Abubakar has had to publicly correct one of his own press aides or media aides after the aide appeared to suggest that an Atiku administration would restore subsidy temporarily and eventually phase it out. Now, Atiku has now made it very much clearer that this was not his position of the aide, that the aide was not speaking on his authority. He says that when he said he would return to subsidy, he meant exactly that. And this is significant because the subsidy debate is not simply about the price Nigerians pay at the pump. It's about how government chooses to protect citizens, how much that protection should cost, and who ultimately pays for it, and whether Nigeria can afford to repeat an economic policy that has generated controversy for years. Let's take a listen to Atiku Abubakar of the ADC now.
So many Nigerians have been calling me to say that, one of my press aides had contradicted me in my policy statement as far as subsidy is concerned. I want to repeat categorically that what I said, I will return subsidy, I will. And for sure, Nigeria is rich enough to look after the welfare of its citizens. Therefore, let it be clearly stated that he was not speaking on my own authority, because the removal of subsidy has driven more Nigerians into poverty than at any other time in the history of this country. And the fundamental responsibility of the government is the welfare of the citizens. Two, I will make sure we secure this country. We are competing with thieves. They stole the election. Now they have stolen the economy. They have stolen everything.
To you. I mean, that was the ADC presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar when he received the Osun State leadership of the ADC in Abuja, reaffirming his point on subsidy and saying that his media aide, Paul Aide, was simply on his own.
Making his position there very clear. So now we have Atiku saying essentially, don't reinterpret my position for me. And that raises a very important question as we move towards 2027. What exactly is Atiku promising Nigerians when he says he will restore subsidy? And perhaps we should start by acknowledging why this promise is politically attractive. Nigerians know what subsidy removal has meant in practical terms. People can explain to you that since that announcement was made in May 2023, this is what it has led to. They can give you a long list of what it means. Prices went up, transportation costs went up, and businesses that rely on generators and vehicles saw their operating costs rise. And eventually, those higher prices were reflected in the prices ordinary Nigerians pay for goods and services. So when he now says, I will bring down the cost of petrol, that's an immediate appeal to that promise, because people can understand the connection between fuel and the cost of living. Atiku has argued that the current reforms have transferred too much burden to Nigerian families and that government should do more to cushion citizens from the impact. But when we arrive at the difficult part, if government decides to subsidize fuel again, who pays for it?
I mean, that's where this conversation has now moved beyond the politics of announcement, because the issue of subsidy has been, on the lips of Nigerians for quite some time now, because subsidy sounds simple when you're standing at the petrol station and looking at the price on the pump. But from the perspective of government finances, it is a much more complicated question. If the government decides that Nigeria should pay less than the economic cost of producing or supplying petroleum products, somebody has to cover that difference. That somebody is ultimately the government, which means public money. And public money is finite. Now, so if an Atiku administration decides to spend heavily on subsidies, Nigerians should be asking what that means for every other area of government spending. How much will be allocated to subsidy? Would it be fixed amount? Would it depend on the international price of crude oil? And what happens when crude prices fall, as we're currently experiencing now? And then what happens when they rise? And perhaps, most importantly, what mechanism would prevent the kind of abuse and opacity that became associated with the old subsidy system? Now, if you look at the current subsidy system that we have now in this current administration, how is it working? Subsidy is removed now, right? And then if you now look in the future, that means the future is also looking at the past when we had subsidy on, meaning that we want to repeat the past in the future. If Atiku becomes the president by bringing back subsidy, how does it affect the lives of the Nigerians? And when you look at the explanation of his media aide now, Paul Aide, where he says, oh, we're going to restore subsidy back, giving time for Nigerian people to, recover from all of the stress they've gone through when subsidy was removed right now. So it means that you give me some sort of relief and then go back to the same subsidy that was removed. So where are we? And I'm sure that's why Atiku has come out to say, that is your own stance. That's not me. Don't interpret my words for me.
And in fact, that old system that you mentioned, where we had government subsidizing petrol, is of course one of the biggest and most controversial items in national conversations. Repeated questions about the volume of fuel being imported, the number of beneficiaries, the amount being paid by the government, and whether the system was being manipulated. What happens to the monies realized if eventually you do decide to remove the subsidy, or in this case that is being removed now? So if Atiku wants to bring it back, Nigerians have every right to ask what changed, because this was not his position in 2023. He actually agreed, that removing the subsidy was a step in the right direction.
Right.
So why has he now gone back on that particular stance, on that position to say, look, we're going to have to bring it back? What would an Atiku subsidy regime look like that the old one did not? How would it be monitored? Who would audit it? And how would the government make sure that the benefit actually reaches consumers rather than become another avenue for rent seeking?